bleed, show his scars, say these wounds. Old men forget, yet all shall be forgotten. For he today who sheds his blood with me shall be my brother. Got a question for you. Who's got it better than us? Nobody! Each other has...
Welcome to the Big House, the CFB Nation. Let's get right into it. The portal has closed. Wide receiver Amarian Walker, he had a cup of coffee at Ole Miss, and he comes back. He was there. He was at Michigan, prior to leaving in January. Spent the entire spring there. Apparently didn't like where he was going, so he ends up coming back. Now, during his time at Michigan, he was at wide receiver. He converted to cornerback, and Jim Harbaugh was someone who really loved his talent. He was a very raw athlete and was someone that had a lot of talent. They just didn't know where to use him. And he's being brought back as a wide receiver this time around. Now, Michigan, they have 5 scholarship players at the position. And Walker brings in some depth, and he brings in some good skill sets that is raw. Hopefully he gets refined. Now, Walker is 6'4", 180 pounds, and he has reportedly tested a 3.89 second shuttle that would have been the fastest in the 2023 NFL draft class. He has a 6.10 second 3-cone, and that would be the fastest in NFL combine history if we are to believe those reports. Now, Walker is very raw. He is someone that I believe is going to be towards the back end of the rotation. Now, when he was at cornerback last year, he was learning on the fly. He did okay. There were some times where you saw him practice, he just did not look good, but he is a guy that is learning, and he comes back to Michigan. And does he come back because he realized he wasn't going to be a factor at Ole Miss, or does he come back because he realized that, hey, the grass isn't always greener? Now, we know that Michigan doesn't have the NIL deal that Ole Miss does, so it's not money motivated. I would have Walker as the 4th receiver in the rotation right now. He probably wasn't going to crack the rotation at cornerback or at wide receiver at Ole Miss. So when you bring him back, he's going to be a good depth piece. But if you're counting on him to be impactful, I don't think we're going to see that right away. Now, the other receiver they bring in is CJ Charleston. He is 6 foot, 190 pounds. He is a grad transfer. He comes in from Youngstown State. Now, this past season, he had 35 receptions, 504 yards, 4 touchdowns. He lined up out of the slot 40% of the time and out wide 59% of the time. He improved his yards after the catch. Prior to 2023, it was under 3 yards. It jumped to 7.2 yards. And I like that jump. I do like it. He also showed better hands, only had 2 drops. He caught 5 of 8 passes that went 20 or more yards. So he does have some good skill sets, as a deep ball threat. But look, he's going to be that 7th receiver on the roster. He's just a depth piece. He is not someone that you're going to count on. Michigan gets a couple of recruits that will be joining in the summer in Amarian Stewart, Channing Goodwin, a couple of 3-4-star kind of recruits that are coming in. I would expect them to jump him immediately when they come in. So they'll be at 9 for the positional depth, which is fine. You want to see 10 to 12 typically, but with all these guys being young, the majority is going to return in 2025, so 9 is a decent enough number, and I'm fine with that. They're going to grow together. Now, we see a recruit that has made a commitment. That is offensive lineman Avery Gatch. He is 6'4", 270 pounds, a 4-star in the composites, the 19th ranked offensive lineman, and he's currently a top 250 recruit. So I do like him coming in. With the offensive line, they're going to be patchwork this year. We know they have some youth coming up and rising, but it's always good to get more guys on the trenches, the offensive line. he's not going to be impactful the first year, but he is someone that is highly coveted and highly recruited. So I do like him for Michigan. I do like him coming in to possibly start his second, possibly third year there. Now, we mentioned with the portal closing, what does that do for these positional rooms at quarterback? I do believe it was a surprise that none of them left the program. I think that's a very good thing. Now, they'll have an entire summer to kind of continue to work on their craft, to grow, and someone's going to be named the starter. And the good thing is they're all at least there to the end of the year. So they'll have a good 4 or 5 guys that they'll kind of lean on. I'm still interested to see who ends up winning that position. Running backs, I was a little surprised that Benjamin Hall didn't leave. He was someone that could have looked to go elsewhere, and he was the clear third running back in spring, highly coveted. Jordan Marshall comes in, he's going to come in the summer, and he got recruited over. So it was a pleasant surprise that Benjamin Hall is still with the program. He's going to add depth there. Like I said, right now he's that third running back, and that's before Jordan Marshall comes in. When Jordan Marshall comes in the summertime with a full fall camp under him, I do think he does leapfrog Hall and becomes that third back. But with Benjamin Hall there, you have a lot of stability within the program and within that position. So I do like that. The defensive line, that was a little bit of a shocker. Now, they didn't lose anyone and of note, and that was very key. There were notes and rumors that some of the bigger name guys might get poached with some NIL deal. Supposedly, Texas was calling on some of them, but at the end of the day, none of them left. They're all still with the program, and that is great depth for the defensive line. They can rotate 8 guys without any production loss. I mean, these are guys that you can bring in, you rotate them in, get a lot of pressures, get a lot of blitz packages. And with this depth, that's going to be a key for this defense. Now, what is the biggest pressing need that's still left for Michigan to address? And the one thing that we do need to remind everyone is that the Michigan NIL collective is not very strong. They barely got off the ground this off season, and they're not very strong. What they're kind of holding their hat on is to prestige the program, getting guys into the NFL. That's what they're hanging their hat on. They can't pay guys 6 figures or even 7 figures like Ohio State can, but they will be needing to bring some guys in that the guys that they're going to bring are going to be guys that they want to win, or guys that are going to be jumping up in competition. I don't really see more power 4 guys moving in. I'm thinking lower power 4, if anything, or even group of 5 guys to kind of come in and compete. The wish list that I have is going to be still at the safety position. I still want offensive line depth, and I want cornerback depth. Now, we reached to the part where I want to talk about Tyler Morris. I want to talk about him for this upcoming season for the Wolverines. He is 5'11", 185 pounds. Now, he is a guy that was part of the 2022 class. He's a 4-star in the composites, a consensus top 30 wide receiver. He was overall a top 180th ranked prospect for the class. He is the de facto wide receiver 1 for the program. This past season, he had 13 receptions for 197 yards and 1 touchdown. He lined up out wide 66% of the time this past season. And what I like about him is he averaged 6 yards after the catch, and with an average depth of target of 15.4 yards. Now, not everyone is a football nerd like me, so essentially with him, he was a deep threat last year. Typically with the ADOT, you see it at around 10 to 12 yards. That's typical. Anything less, you're looking at more like slot, short area targets. Anything more, you're looking at deep ball guys. And what I like is that to kind of continue on the advanced metrics here, typically when you have a larger ADOT, you have a smaller yak, and Morris gives you both. His ADOT was 15.4, and he has 6 yards after the catch. That's a pretty unique profile that I really do like. I like digging into him, looking at him, seeing what he can do for this upcoming season. And what he does and what this gives the freedom to do is you can work Samaj Morgan with the short area touches where he doesn't have to be that refined route runner yet. He is someone that's just good in space. You just give him the ball, let him create. That's who he is. And with Morris being able to stretch the field, that allows him to operate that way. And we talk about the other boundary receiver and Frederick Moore. He can then work the intermediate target. He doesn't have to necessarily be that deep threat guy. Frederick Moore is more the all-around talent that I do like, but he wouldn't be able to operate that if it wasn't for Morris. And what this ultimately does is this frees up Colson Loveland to freelance. He can work short to intermediate. He's not confined to having to be in a certain spot at all times. So with Morris being that wide receiver one, he's going to draw the top corners. He's going to be the guy that's going to give space, kind of stretch the field. And I do like that. You have to remember, he showed up huge in the Rose Bowl. He got that touchdown. That was a very key part for the offense when they got into a rhythm, got into sync, and that carried over to spring. Morris, he gained a lot of confidence and showed itself in the spring and into the spring game. So what should we expect from him in the upcoming season? Well, I like the trio they have at wide receiver. I like that they can grow together, they can mesh together, and they all work well together. That's the thing. A lot of times when you get 2-3 receivers, they kind of cannibalize each other. For example, if you look at Alabama, they have Jeremy Bernard, Kendrick Law, and then Aaron Hampton. They all kind of work the same short area creativity with Yak, and that's not what you see here at Michigan. Everything they work together. It's pretty much in sync, and I really like that trio, and I think they're going to do really well this year. Now, I expect Morris to have a good year. I think for a 40-catch season is well within the range of outcomes. And you have to remember, a 40-catch season in this offense with a mystery quarterback that you don't know who it's going to be, I think it's going to be a very good season for Tyler Morris to build on to next year. And that'll lead us to our throwback player of the day. Wide receiver Marquise Walker, a Wolverine from 1998 to 2001. Now, as a sophomore, he had 31 receptions, 331 yards with 2 touchdowns, and he parlayed that to the very next year. He kind of built that to have 45 receptions, 599 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He finally broke out as a senior with 81 receptions, 1,043 yards, and 11 touchdowns. Now, Walker was the 86th pick in the 2002 NFL draft and was selected by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Walker would go on to be a Super Bowl champion. He was on that team as a rookie, and he would spend a couple of years in the league, but injuries really derailed his career. His senior season with the Wolverines, you saw what could have been had he stayed healthy. Now, that brings us to the end of our episode. And I want to thank you for tuning into another episode. Welcome to the Big House. I want to give a special thank you to Dwight Peoples for the intro, Nino Brown for producing me, the entire CFB Nation family. And until next week, who's got better than CFB Nation?
Got a question for you. Who's got it better than us? No way!